The rain outside the hospital window fell without mercy, like it had no intention of stopping. Mia Reed lay on the narrow bed, her body weak, her breathing uneven. The room smelled of disinfectant and damp air. A cheap curtain separated her from the next patient, but no one stood on her side. No family. No husband. Only silence. Her phone lay beside her hand, the screen cracked. Earlier that day, she had received a message that felt colder than the rain. Lucas Hart, the contract marriage ends today. My lawyer will handle the rest. Mia stared at the words until her vision blurred. So this was how her life ended. She had married Lucas Hart, the cold CEO of Hart Group, not out of love, but desperation. 3 years ago, her brother Evan needed surgery. Her uncle demanded money she didn't have. And Lucas needed a wife, quiet, obedient, temporary. She signed the contract without hesitation. 3 years of living like a shadow. She cooked, cleaned, stayed silent at banquets, endured Nina Cole's mocking smiles, and never once asked Lucas for warmth. She told herself it was fine. She told herself she was grateful. But now, lying here alone, Mia finally understood. She had sold her entire life, and still lost everything. Her chest tightened painfully. Evan, she whispered. Her brother's face appeared in her fading vision. Pale, gentle, always trying to smile so she wouldn't worry. I'm sorry, she thought desperately. I couldn't protect you. Her uncle had taken the last of her savings last month. Evan's treatment stopped soon after. Tears slid silently into her hair. Footsteps echoed briefly outside the room but passed by. No one came in. The heart monitor let out a long, flat sound. Mia's fingers twitched once, then fell still. Mia, wake up. A sharp voice pierced the darkness. Mia gasped violently and sat up. Her heart hammered so hard it felt like it might break through her chest. She was breathing. She was alive. She looked around in shock. This wasn't a hospital. A small, old bedroom. Peeling wallpaper. A creaking fan overhead. Her childhood desk in the corner. Her breath caught. No, this isn't possible. She rushed to the desk calendar with trembling hands. June 3rd. 3 years ago. 3 days before she signed the contract marriage. Mia's knees went weak. She collapsed onto the bed, hands covering her mouth as tears streamed down uncontrollably. I'm reborn. Her mind spun wildly as memories slammed into her, signing the contract, moving into the Hart mansion, Nina's humiliation, Lucas's indifference, Evan's declining health, and finally, dying alone. This wasn't a dream. This was fate giving her one more chance. Her phone buzzed. A message popped up. Uncle Reed, the Hart family agreed. Don't mess this up. This marriage will save us. Mia stared at the message. In her past life, this text had felt like hope. Now, it felt like a chain. Her tears slowly stopped. A strange calm settled over her chest. I won't run, she murmured softly. But I won't beg either. She wiped her face and stood up, looking at her reflection in the cracked mirror. She looked younger. Thinner. But her eyes were different. No longer desperate. No longer empty. A knock came at the door. Mia. Evan's weak but cheerful voice called. Are you awake? Her heart clenched. She opened the door. Evan stood there, holding his school bag, smiling gently. Still alive. Still breathing. Mia pulled him into a tight hug without warning. Sis. Evan laughed softly. What's wrong? Mia held him like she was afraid he'd disappear. Nothing, she whispered. I'm just happy. This time, she swore silently, I'll protect you. No matter what. That evening, across the city, in the top-floor office of Hart Group, Lucas Hart stood by the floor-to-ceiling window. City lights reflected in his cold, unreadable eyes. His assistant placed a file on the desk. The contract marriage candidate, Mia Reed. Background is clean. Poor. No complications. Lucas flipped through the file. His gaze paused briefly on her photo. Something stirred unfamiliar, faint. Schedule the signing, he said calmly. 3 days from now. Yes, President Hart. Lucas closed the file. He didn't know that the woman he was about to marry had already lived and died by his side once. And this time, she would no longer be the same. The Heart Group headquarters rose like a glass fortress against the sky. Mia stood at the entrance, clutching a thin folder in her hands. In her past life, she had come here trembling, head lowered, afraid to say the wrong word. Today, her back was straight, her step steady. This is just a contract, her inner voice reminded her calmly. Not my worth. The receptionist led her into the top-floor meeting room. The door opened. Lucas Hart was already seated at the head of the long table, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. His expression was cold, distant, exactly as she remembered. A man who looked like emotions were unnecessary to him. For a split second, Mia's heart tightened. Not because she loved him, but because she remembered dying without ever being seen by him. Lucas lifted his eyes when she entered. Their gazes met. Something flickered in his eyes, brief, unreadable, then vanished. Sit, he said calmly. Mia sat down, placing her folder on the table instead of immediately reaching for the contract like she did before. The lawyer began explaining the terms, voice flat and professional. Duration, 3 years. Compensation provided monthly. Mrs. Hart's condition requires a legal spouse. I'd like to add conditions, Mia said suddenly. The room froze. The lawyer stopped mid-sentence. Lucas's eyes sharpened slightly as he looked at her. Conditions, he repeated. Yes. Mia opened her folder and slid a document across the table. Mine. In her past life, she never dared to speak here. This time, she spoke clearly. First, she said calmly, this marriage is strictly contractual. No humiliation in public or private. The lawyer blinked. Lucas leaned back slightly, studying her. Second, Mia continued, my brother Evan's medical expenses will be covered fully and transparently. Direct payment to the hospital. Lucas's fingers paused on the table. And third, Mia said, meeting his eyes, I will not be used as a tool to appease other women. Silence filled the room. The lawyer swallowed nervously. Miss Reed, these. Lucas raised a hand. Interesting, he said quietly. Mia's heart beat steadily. She didn't look away. In her past life, Nina Cole walked all over her because she allowed it. Not this time. Lucas picked up the document and skimmed it. You're different from what the file describes, he said after a moment. Mia smiled faintly. People change when they're pushed to the edge. Lucas's gaze lingered on her for a second longer than necessary. Add her conditions, he said finally. The lawyer nodded quickly. Yes, President Hart. Mia exhaled softly. First step, she thought. Done. As she left the building, heels clicking softly on the marble floor, a familiar mocking voice stopped her. Well, if it isn't the future contract wife. Nina Cole stood by the elevator, dressed elegantly, eyes full of thinly veiled disdain. In her past life, Mia's stomach would have dropped. Now, she simply looked at her. You must be Nina, Mia said calmly. Nina's brows lifted. Oh, you know me. I know enough, Mia replied evenly. You like things that don't belong to you. Nina laughed sharply. Careful. You're only marrying him for money. Mia tilted her head slightly. And you're standing here because... Nina's smile froze. I don't need to explain myself to you. Of course, Mia said gently. Because there's nothing to explain. She stepped past Nina without another word. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But Nina felt like she had just been slapped. That evening, Mia returned to the small apartment she shared with Evan. Evan was sitting at the table, sorting pills carefully. You went to see them today? He asked softly. Yes, Mia replied, pouring him a glass of water. Are you okay with it? Evan asked, guilt flickering in his eyes. Mia knelt in front of him and held his hands. This time, she said gently, I'm choosing with open eyes. Evan nodded slowly. I'll get better, he said seriously. So you don't have to suffer. Mia smiled, though her heart ached. You already saved me once, she thought. Late that night, in the Hart mansion, Lucas sat alone in his study. Mrs. Hart's voice echoed in his memory. That girl, his grandmother had said earlier, has dignity. Don't waste it. Lucas glanced at the contract lying on his desk. He remembered Mia's eyes, calm, unafraid. Not greedy. Not desperate. Just steady. Why did she feel familiar? He wondered. He closed the folder slowly, unaware that the woman he thought he could control with a contract had already rewritten the terms of her fate. And his. The Hart mansion was quiet in a way that felt heavy. Mia stood at the entrance, her small suitcase beside her feet. The marble floor reflected the chandelier above, cold and distant, just like the man standing a few steps away. Lucas Hart watched her silently. In her past life, she had entered this house with fear and gratitude mixed together, constantly reminding herself that she didn't belong. This time, she took a slow breath. This is just a place, she told herself. Not a cage. You can use the guest room on the east side, Lucas said flatly. My grandmother lives here. She doesn't like noise. I understand, Mia replied calmly. Lucas paused slightly. In his memory, Mia was always soft-spoken, almost invisible, but today, her tone carried a quiet confidence that unsettled him. A housekeeper led Mia upstairs. The room was large, clean, and bright. Sunlight streamed through the window, landing softly on the bed. This is more than enough, Mia said politely. She placed Evan's medical files carefully into the drawer, her movements slow and deliberate. I'm here to survive, she thought. Not to lose myself again. That evening, the Hart family held a small dinner. Mrs. Hart sat at the head of the table, her sharp eyes observing everything. So, she said, looking at Mia, you're the girl who dared to change my grandson's contract. Mia met her gaze respectfully. I only protected what mattered to me. Mrs. Hart laughed softly. Good. Lucas stiffened slightly. Nina Cole arrived shortly after, dressed elegantly as always, her smile bright but her eyes sharp. Oh, dinner without telling me? Nina said lightly. Lucas, you're really changing. Her gaze landed on Mia, assessing her from head to toe. So this is her, Nina said, smiling. The contract wife. Mia continued eating calmly. I'm Mia, she said evenly. Nice to meet you. Nina raised an eyebrow. You seem very comfortable. Mia smiled faintly. Comfort doesn't always come from wealth. The air shifted. Mrs. Hart's lips curled slightly in amusement. Lucas said nothing, but his eyes lingered on Mia longer than before. That night, Mia couldn't sleep. She sat at the desk, reviewing Evan's hospital schedule, calculating expenses. A knock sounded at the door. She opened it to find Lucas standing there, holding a document. The hospital confirmed Evan's surgery date, he said. Everything is arranged. Mia froze. In her past life, this had taken months of begging. Thank you, she said quietly. Lucas nodded. Then, unexpectedly, he said, you don't need to thank me. It's part of the contract. Mia looked at him. Even so, she replied calmly, I'll remember it. Lucas hesitated, then turned and left. As he walked down the hallway, something in his chest felt strange. Days passed. Mia adjusted to life in the mansion without trying to please anyone. She woke early, helped Mrs. Hart with tea, and left for work at a small design studio she had applied to herself without Lucas's help. Lucas noticed. You don't need to work, he said one morning. I need to, Mia replied. For myself. Her answer lingered with him long after she left. The first major social test came at a business banquet. Mia stood beside Lucas in a simple dress. She wasn't dazzling, but she was composed. Whispers followed them. That's the contract wife. She doesn't look impressive. Nina's voice cut through the murmurs. Mia, she said sweetly, you must feel uncomfortable here. Mia turned calmly. Why would I? She asked. Nina smiled. Because this world isn't built for people like you. Mia looked around the room. Then she smiled. This world, she said softly, was built by people. And people can be replaced. The laughter nearby died instantly. Lucas glanced at her sharply. Nina's face darkened. Later that night, when a client deliberately ignored Mia and spoke only to Nina, Lucas did something unexpected. She speaks for me, he said coldly, gesturing to Mia. The room fell silent. Mia's heart skipped. Nina clenched her glass tightly. That night, Mia returned to her room, exhausted. She didn't notice Lucas standing in the hallway, watching her door close. For the first time, he realized. She wasn't trying to climb up. She was trying to stand on her own. And somehow, that made her more dangerous than anyone else. The Heart Group's annual charity gala was the most talked-about event of the season. Crystal chandeliers, flowing gowns, powerful figures from every industry, this was the place where status was displayed without mercy. Mia stood in front of the mirror in her room, adjusting the simple but elegant dress Mrs. Hart had personally chosen for her. You don't need to shine, the old lady had said calmly. Just stand straight. Mia remembered those words as she walked beside Lucas into the ballroom. Tonight, she wasn't nervous. She was alert. Nina Cole watched them from across the room, her smile frozen on her lips. She doesn't belong here, Nina thought bitterly. She never did. Throughout the evening, Nina moved deliberately, laughing a little louder, standing a little closer to Lucas whenever possible. And finally, she struck. Mia, Nina said sweetly, raising her voice just enough for others to hear, I heard you grew up in a very modest neighborhood. Several people nearby turned to look. Mia set down her glass slowly. Yes, she replied calmly. I did. Nina smiled wider. That must have been difficult. I can't imagine adjusting to this kind of life so suddenly. The implication was clear. Whispers spread like smoke. In her past life, this was where Mia had lowered her head. This time, she didn't. I didn't adjust suddenly, Mia said evenly. I adjusted honestly. Nina's eyes narrowed. Honesty doesn't buy elegance. Mia looked around the room, then back at Nina. No, she said softly. But it buys dignity. The surrounding guests fell silent. Lucas turned sharply toward Mia. Her calm strength hit him harder than any confrontation. Nina laughed awkwardly. You really think dignity can protect you here? Mia met her gaze steadily. No, she replied. But truth can. She reached into her clutch. Nina's smile finally cracked. Minutes later, the large screen behind the stage lit up. Originally meant to display donation figures, it now showed something else. Transaction records. Screenshots. Emails. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. What is this? Someone whispered. Lucas's assistant stepped forward, voice clear. These are records of Nina Cole's illegal insider trading and misuse of charity funds. Nina's face drained of color. This is fake, she shouted. Lucas, say something. Lucas stepped forward slowly. His voice was cold enough to freeze the room. I already did, he said. By allowing it to be shown. Nina staggered back. Mia spoke then, not loudly, but clearly. You tried to shame me for being poor, she said. But poverty isn't a crime. She looked directly at Nina. Stealing is. Security moved in. Nina's carefully built world collapsed in minutes. As she was escorted out, she screamed, You think you've won? You're just a contract wife. Mia didn't flinch. Lucas's hand suddenly rested on the small of her back. Enough, he said coldly. She's my wife. The word echoed. Not contract. Not temporary. Wife. Mia's heart skipped violently. The room erupted into hushed shock. Later that night, on the balcony overlooking the city, Mia stood alone, her hands trembling slightly. The confrontation replayed in her mind. She hadn't planned to expose Nina so publicly, but she hadn't stopped it either. Footsteps approached. Lucas stopped beside her. You could have warned me, he said quietly. Mia didn't look at him. Would you have believed me? He didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, I do now. She turned to face him. For years, Mia said softly, people like her believed wealth gave them the right to humiliate others. Lucas met her gaze. And you? I believed I deserved it, she replied honestly. Lucas felt something twist painfully in his chest. You don't, he said firmly. Their eyes locked. For a moment, the distance between them disappeared. That same night, Mia received a call. Her uncle's voice was sharp and angry. "What did you do?" "Nina was our connection. Do you know how much money you cost me?" Mia closed her eyes. "In this life," she said calmly, "you don't own me." She ended the call and blocked the number. A quiet weight lifted from her chest. Across the city, Nina sat alone in a dark car, makeup smeared, eyes burning with hatred. "She humiliated me," Nina whispered. "I won't let this end." She pulled out her phone and typed a message. "I know how to destroy Mia Reed." Back at the mansion, Mrs. Hart watched Mia carefully as she returned. "You didn't bow," the old woman said. Mia shook her head. "I couldn't." Mrs. Hart smiled approvingly. "Good," she said. "A Hart woman shouldn't." Mia froze. A warmth spread through her chest, slow, unfamiliar. Lucas stood at the top of the stairs, watching her. For the first time, he realized. The power imbalance he thought defined their marriage was already shifting. And he wasn't sure anymore who held the upper hand. After the gala, the Hart mansion felt different. Not louder. Not warmer. Just closer. Mia noticed it in small things. The way the staff spoke to her with genuine respect. The way Mrs. Hart asked her opinion during meals. And the way Lucas started noticing when she wasn't around. That morning, Mia woke early and prepared breakfast for Evan before heading out. She had insisted he stay in the mansion during his recovery. At first, he resisted, but Mrs. Hart's firm command left no room for refusal. "You look tired," Evan said softly, watching her pour tea. "I'm fine," Mia replied, smiling. But inside, the memories were stirring. The gala. Nina's eyes. The feeling of standing in front of everyone without bowing. "I survived," she thought. "But I can't afford to relax." At Hart Group, the atmosphere was tense. Lucas stood in the conference room, listening to reports of the aftermath. "Nina Cole's accounts are frozen," the legal director said. "But rumors are spreading. Some investors are watching closely." Lucas nodded. "Let them watch." As the meeting ended, his assistant hesitated. "President Hart, there's something else." He slid a folder forward. Lucas opened it. His expression darkened instantly. Inside were photos. Mia leaving the hospital with Evan. Mia entering a small cafe. Mia standing alone at a bus stop, face calm, unaware she was being watched. "Who sent this?" Lucas asked coldly. "Anonymous," the assistant replied. But the message said she doesn't belong where she stands. Lucas's grip tightened. For the first time in years, real anger surfaced. That evening, Lucas returned home earlier than usual. He found Mia in the garden, kneeling beside Mrs. Hart, trimming roses. "You'll prick your fingers," Mrs. Hart scolded. "I don't mind," Mia replied gently. Lucas stopped a few steps away, watching the scene. She fit here. Not because of money, but because of the way she carried herself. "Mia," Lucas said. She stood up and wiped her hands. "Yes. Come with me," he said. "Now." Mrs. Hart raised an eyebrow but said nothing. In the car, the silence was thick. "Did someone threaten you?" Lucas asked suddenly. Mia blinked. "What?" He tossed the folder onto her lap. She opened it. Her face remained calm, but her fingers trembled. "I've lived with eyes on my back my whole life," she said quietly. "This isn't new." Lucas felt something break inside his chest. "That doesn't make it acceptable," he said sharply. She looked at him then, truly looked. "You don't have to protect me," she said softly. Lucas stopped the car. The sudden halt startled her. "I know," he said. "But I want to." The words surprised them both. Mia's breath caught. That night, a storm rolled in. Thunder echoed across the sky. Mia sat at her desk, reviewing hospital forms when the power flickered and went out. She froze. Darkness rushed in. Her heart began to pound. Not again, her inner voice whispered. In her past life, this was how it happened. Alone. Powerless. Forgotten. Her breathing became shallow. A knock sounded. "Mia!" Lucas's voice. She didn't answer. He pushed the door open and saw her sitting on the floor, arms wrapped around herself, eyes unfocused. He crossed the room instantly. "Mia," he said firmly, kneeling in front of her. "Look at me." She didn't respond. Without thinking, he pulled her into his arms. "You're safe," he said quietly. "I'm here." Her body trembled violently. "I died like this," she whispered hoarsely. "Alone." Lucas froze. "What did you say?" But she had already buried her face against his chest, tears soaking through his shirt. He held her tighter. "I won't let that happen again," he said firmly. "Not as a CEO. Not as part of a contract. But as a man." The power returned minutes later. Mia slowly pulled back, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she said. "I lost control." Lucas shook his head. "You didn't," he said. "You trusted me." Silence settled between them, heavy, fragile. Outside, the storm softened. Inside, something had changed permanently. Across the city, Nina met with a man in a dim cafe. "I want her reputation destroyed," Nina said coldly. "Slowly. Completely." The man smiled thinly. "That kind of woman always breaks," he said. "Especially when she starts believing she's loved." Back at the mansion, Mia lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her heart felt unfamiliar. Warm. Dangerous. "Don't forget," her inner voice warned. This started as a contract. In the hallway outside, Lucas stood silently at her door long after the lights went out. For the first time, he wasn't sure where the contract ended. And where his feelings began. Morning sunlight filtered gently into the Hart mansion. Mia woke up slowly, her body relaxed in a way it hadn't been for years. For a brief second, she forgot where she was, then memories rushed back. The storm. Lucas's arms. The words, "I won't let that happen again." Her heart tightened. "Don't misunderstand," her inner voice warned. "Feelings are dangerous." She got out of bed and went downstairs to prepare breakfast for Evan, like always. But today, something was different. Lucas was already there. He stood by the kitchen island, sleeves rolled up, awkwardly attempting to make coffee. "You're up early," Mia said softly. He glanced at her. "Couldn't sleep." An honest answer. They stood in silence, not uncomfortable, just careful. The peace didn't last long. By noon, rumors exploded online. Anonymous posts spread rapidly. "Poor girl marries CEO for money." "Fake innocence hides dirty past." "Contract wife exposed." Photos were edited. Context twisted. Mia's hands trembled as she scrolled. In her first life, this was where everything collapsed. She felt the familiar suffocating pressure rise. Then she stopped. "Not this time." Lucas stormed into the room, phone in hand, eyes burning. "I'm handling this," he said coldly. "No," Mia replied quietly. He froze. She looked up at him, eyes clear. "This is my fight." That afternoon, Mia asked for one thing. A press conference. The board objected. Advisors warned him. Lucas approved it anyway. When Mia walked onto the stage, cameras flashed violently. She stood straight. "My name is Mia Reed," she said calmly. "Before I married Lucas Hart, I was poor. I still am, in some people's eyes." The room went silent. "I didn't marry him to escape poverty. I married him to save my brother's life." She paused. "And yes, it began as a contract." Gasps filled the room. "But contracts don't define character." She lifted her gaze. "I worked. I endured humiliation. I stayed silent when people thought I deserved less." Her voice didn't shake. "I won't be silent anymore." She turned slightly. Lucas stepped forward. "I chose her," he said firmly. "And I continue to choose her." Reporters shouted questions. "President Hart, are you saying this marriage is real?" Lucas looked at Mia. "Not the cameras." "From this moment on," he said clearly, "there is no contract." He took the document from his pocket and tore it in half. Flashbulbs exploded. Mia's breath caught. That night, the truth surfaced completely. Nina's final scheme was exposed, fabricated evidence, paid accounts, manipulation traced back to her. She was arrested quietly. No screams. No drama. Just emptiness. Days later, the mansion was calm again. Evan's surgery was successful. Mrs. Hart watched Mia from her chair, eyes warm. You healed more than just yourself, she said. Mia smiled softly. On the rooftop at sunset, Lucas stood beside Mia. I don't know when it happened, he said quietly. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as responsibility. Mia looked at him. And started seeing you as my future, she asked gently. He nodded. This time, she said, voice steady, I won't beg for love. He reached for her hand. You won't have to. The city lights flickered on below them. In her first life, she chased love and died empty. In this life, she stood still. And love finally found her.